J-Team presents.
Okay, welcome all to another episode of the Jokatech podcast. This week's discussion will be centered around, of course, what everyone's talking about. The Masters! Featuring Tiger Woods. But also, a little surprise for you, women's boxing. Claressa Shields' major title win over the weekend. Yes, there were a lot of other events. You had Adesanya having a real test versus Kevin Gastelum, as I predicted would happen. You had sort of an upset of Dustin Poirier over Max Holloway, which I sort of predicted as well. There were a number of matchups. But I think those two probably trumped them all. And so first and foremost, we got to get to this discussion of the Masters. Because I keep hearing all these guys talk about how long they covered Tiger Woods and how long they've covered golf and covered the Masters and all this other crap. And, since the 70s, and I've been watching his whole career. You know what? I watched a little bit of Eldrick Taunt Woods myself. And I must say this. Every reporter wrote him off. Now, I commend Skip Bayless for being one of the reporters that's honest with that. To say, you know something, I swore heaven and earth he would never win another Masters. And I remember the year was around, it was 2008 when he won his last major, but it was shortly after his comeback, which was a few years later, when he started winning minor tournaments and he started just winning a little bit and showing signs of life. That's when a lot of these comments were made. So I can't give them the benefit of the doubt of, we saw him, we said this when we saw his injuries and extended them at the very worst. No. It's when he showed some signs of health that these guys were writing him off. And what I don't understand is where the inspiration for that came from. Because even at his worst, Tiger Woods has always been a physical specimen compared to the majority of the field. Only I would say maybe in the last few years you have some guys that are physical specimens on the tour. Some of these young guys are actually coming in shape and they look like throwback versions of Tiger, to where it's actually, this is the only time where you can say he doesn't quite look the most physically imposing on the course like he used to. And that's only in the last few years. But for the most part, physically, his ceiling has always been more than high enough, in my opinion, to execute what he needs to on the game. Yeah, he's had injuries, he's had surgery, fusion, the knees and all this other thing, all these things that went on, the Achilles injuries that he's had. I understand that. But when he went and came back and proved that he could sustain swinging a club, and he started making it through tournaments, the write-offs had no excuse past that point. And I remember every reporter saying they bet their life he would never win another major. But now, the angle that's being spun is this. Well, we never believed it, but he didn't believe it either. Tiger said he would be happy if he could come back and just be able to swing a club again and play with his children, just be healthy enough to just do day-to-day things that you take for granted. I remember that interview. He did say that. But at the same time he was saying that, how many times did he tell you the different coaches that he was working with, the different modifications he was making to his swing, and how much time he was putting in on a practice course trying to find his game? Why would he be doing that on the back end if he really, really didn't expect to push for it? It's like this. It's like if Kobe were to come back right now, my favorite basketball player of all time. Kobe comes back. He still has physical tools where he could perform on the court. But then you have all these naysayers that don't like him for other reasons, off the court reasons. Because as you know, Kobe and Tiger both have had them. And so they fuse that into their argument and say, oh no, there's no way Kobe's going to come back. But then Kobe say, you know what, honestly, the game kind of left me behind. I kind of gave all I could to the game, but I still have a little passion left. I don't, know if I, for sure if I'll ever be able to play to the level I need to win a championship, but I just want to come back and give it a shot. And then he says that, and you document it, and you logged it in your little book. But then you have news coverage showing him in the gym, putting double time in, getting his shot back, getting his rhythm back. Now, what would you conclude when he shocks you and he comes back and say he comes back with the Lakers and they win a championship? Are you going to say, well, we never thought he could do it, he never thought it? He said that, but his actions showed that he was working towards that. And as was mentioned, he did it in impressive fashion against an extremely loaded field. You had some of the best players. You had some of the best players at the top of their game. At the top of their game. Dustin Johnson went off. Brooks Koepka. Xander Schauffele. All these guys, they went off. Jason Day went off. Molinari. And he had to fight through that. Even Tony Finau had moments where he was charging up to the very end. And he stalked, and I remember saying, something? He's being methodical. He was watching the course early, in the early rounds. He never fell too far behind. Everyone's talking about how he was last in putting, he was last in this, last in that. You can look at those stats all you want. Those ticky-tack stats. But if you notice, while he was stalking, he never fell that freaking far behind. If he fell that far behind, if he was that bad in all categories, he wouldn't have been stalking around 12th. You noticed he was stalking and moving at the same time. And he let these guys blow their load. These guys were just storming. I think he got to 3 under. And these guys were at 6, 7 under. They were just beasts. So he was behind them, but close enough to see them. And he just worked on it. And he just waited. He knew that everyone, as I think was so well put by a reporter, they were trying so hard to win the Masters. It opened the door. And then he waited and poised and made his attack. And then he started lasering some beautiful putts in the final round. Absolutely lasering some beautiful putts in the third and final round. That shot him up the leaderboards and got him to take a brief lead before losing it. Then he stayed and shot, and he made another charge again. And the rest is history. The rest is history. Just like that. And everyone's talking about the support and the love from the fans. Oh, we love him. Oh, we can't believe it. We so support him. I saw a lot of forced.
Mile for raid.
this awkward embraces. I don't think anyone there expected him to win again, and I think they all have mixed feelings now that he did it, because I believe you can't hide the truth that they wanted to keep Tiger out of golf. They wanted to run him out of golf, and they were just trying to find any and everybody they could to replace him and make him a distant memory. And the fact that he came back and won a major has thrown a monkey wrench in all of that. And you can't hide that. You could smile through it all you want, but the grimace shows. The sit-down interviews where they ask him how he did it and how he feels, you could sense the tension. They really, really have mixed feelings or despise the moment. And he shocked the world. This is the truest sense of shock the world. Everyone's trying to mask over their disbelief and their doubt and their dislike for Tiger with, oh, well, he didn't believe it either. Tiger was being modest, and that he didn't have false expectations and expect to skyrocket with all the adversity he had to face. But you better believe he came back to the game with hopes of it. So when it happened, it's a shock, but it's not the same shock to him that it is to you. He believed it could happen. You all hoped it wouldn't, and absolutely believed it couldn't. And now you have to eat your pathetic words. But as I said, not a single reporter is going to honestly come forward and own up to their nonsense. You know, besides Skip, I commend Skip for doing that. I really have a lot of issues when it comes to Skip and his view of certain athletes, but at least he was man enough to come forward. And now he's done it. So I just had to, I really had to just get into that, because I think that veil needs to be pulled back. There's a lot of lying, and there's a lot of bojangling going on. There's a lot of dancing going on right now. Everybody believed in him, and everybody loves him now. And it's just not the case. He's an amazing athlete. What he's done is transcendent. He really put himself up there to really... He was already the face of the sport. Now he's kind of become an icon that transcends and is bigger than the sport at this time. You know, he's got 5 green jackets, 1 behind Jack Nicklaus. Everybody else is way behind. And now he's just 1 major away. I mean, what do you want? Jack Nicklaus is the Jordan of the game, and he's truly the Kobe. Although that doesn't really mean much to people these days, because most people don't even consider Kobe Bryant in talks for behind Jordan, because these millennials can only focus on what's in front of their faces. But that's that. Now, moving on to some of the combat events that took place. As I mentioned, yes, Israel Adesanya had a good test. I like his post-fight interview because he was very honest, and he was also very attentive to little things that he needs to do. Now, in the fight, I did see certain holes in his game exposed. Not just in wrestling, but even in the stand-up. When Kevin Gastelum was jabbing with him and going around his guard and doing certain things where he was timing him, Kevin Gastelum's a very dangerous top-tier fighter, but he's not very tall. Although he can make up for that with the way he approaches his stand-up. He really was exposing Adesanya, but it also did test Adesanya and make him have to learn how to fight through being rocked. If he's going to be taking on John Jones in the future, it's good to see him get this kind of experience and kind of learn how to put it all together in different ways and how to wade through certain storms. Because he said during the interview, he said, I see why people break now. Because I was there and I can see why it happens. And that was a good learning experience. And it is good for him, because all those things that are being done to him, John can do those. John Jones isn't just a guy who's built similar to him and has, excellent stand-up. John Jones is a wrestler too, first and foremost. People forget that. They look at the height and they look at his highlight reel strikes, and they forget he's a wrestler. Go back and check his fight with Daniel Cormier. So he can bring that element. So you come in there thinking you're going to have some stand-up fight with the dude, and the next thing you know, he's taking you down and he's ground and pounding you and finishing you. So Israel has to be prepared for that. And this fight definitely went a long ways towards doing that, because Gastelum is definitely a dangerous guy. He's heavy-handed. He's just flat out dangerous. And the rest of the matches really weren't that important to me. The women's boxing match. Claressa Shields versus Christina Hammer. That was something that was very, 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 very impressive. She collected a lot of hardware in this fight. And I also knew it was a test. I didn't really realize that Hammer had dominated for a decade. But one thing I knew was Hammer was a big name. Hammer is an iconic name up there, like amongst the Layla Ali's, where she put women's boxing on the map. So when I saw that these two were fighting, I said, oh crap. Christina Hammer's is legit. She is legit. And this is the one fight for Claressa Shields that I was a little nervous for, because I said, you know something? She has certain tendencies in her game that she's got to be mindful of. Certain things that she does, certain times when she gets a little sloppy, that now you're in there with somebody who will explode and expose that. And so Hammer wasn't intimidated all the way up into the fight. She was 100% ready to go, talking big smack, talking about how she was going to knock Shields out. And honestly, if Claressa didn't step her game up, it could have happened. But she showed her dedication to the game, and she absolutely dominated in that match and shocked a bunch of reporters. A lot of people were writing her off, because that's what kind of shows you it just shows you the attitude and the temperament of the reporters in the field of so-called fans. When you see the first real test or challenge pop up for a prospect, the wave and the direction it goes tells you where the real feelings are. Because while she's riding up until this fight, the reporter's like, yeah, she's a monster, she's good, she's great. The minute she has somebody like Hammer in front of her, oh, she's gonna lose. She's definitely an underdog. This is gonna be a learning experience for her. She's definitely gonna, unfortunately, she's probably gonna take a loss in this one. She's finished. Hammer's gonna take her out. These same reporters. When people do that, that's because all along they've been waiting for you to lose, and they see this person as a savior that's coming to take you out for them. And she addressed that in her press conference after the fight. She said, all you guys have to eat your words. I read what she was saying. Another thing she mentioned too is this, though. In watching a lot of, especially recent high-level women's boxing matches, this whole 2 minutes 10 rounds nonsense, it doesn't make sense. She said it's clear to see at the high level we have more to give. You know, if we're going to have equal pay, equal rights, etc., we need to get rid of this 2 minute 10 round nonsense and give us 3 minutes, 12 rounds. Give us 12 threes. She says, no, we've shown that we can handle that, and then you'll see more exciting fights, you'll see more finishes, etc. And she made a very good point. A lot of people glossed over that and they just went on to the next topic because they didn't want to hear that. But that's another mark of that stupid like womanizing nonsense that they do. Where my thing is this: there's no need to just adjust rule sets just for the sake of it's because we're going to put women here, we're going to do this, that. There's no need to do that. If they've shown the ability to fight at that level, because I'm watching some of these boxing matches and I'm like I'm talking about high level, because the thing is, the people who put these promotions together are not pro-female. They're men, and they're running these organizations. We just had a female. I think she was a coach or something in women's college basketball. That she said a lot of these people that are running all this stuff. I don't know if it was the pros or if it was college, but she was saying it's men running all these organizations. So as long as that's the case, we're going to have biased rule sets. We're going to have biased everything: pay, respect, exposure. And she's right. And it's the same with boxing. There needs to be a lot of reform done there, because Claressa Shields is bringing exposure there. But when you have a format and a form that's set up in such a lesser way, it's going to be hard to really showcase the level that she's on. She's somebody that can box at a high level. Let the field rise. Let them modify the game. Give them 3-minute rounds and give them 10 to 12 rounds. I've watched so many fights, and I'm watching the two like high class, high level female boxers go at it, and they're just warming up, and the round's over. They never get a chance to even be tired, or even to have to recover, or be in a position to have to make adjustments, because the round's over. Then the fight's over before you know it, and all you do is lead the fight thinking, man, I kind of wanted to see a little more. I feel like the minute that things were going to develop, and someone was going to have to figure out the puzzle and find a way to get past the guard or fight through fatigue, the round was over. And it doesn't make any sense to have a rule set like that in place, not because you've seen physical evidence that shows that it should be that way, but just because you just figure it's a bunch of chicks, so we're just going to make it shorter rounds, shorter fights, just because it's some chicks. That's chauvinistic. That's disgusting. So I'm glad she did address that in her post-fight, because I know she's probably going to be somebody that pushes for that. She does have to clean up some of her striking, just a little bit. But I think with longer rounds and longer fights, it's going to force that. It's going to force that. Because she'll start her fights off very sharp, very accurate, punches being thrown with intentions, combinations being put together very well, and then sometimes they'll get back to that sloppy execution where you throw the sloppy flurries of punches, which is a little amateurish. And that's something that she needs to work on. She needs to work on that. But it's definitely going to be, something that's going to happen, because when you realize that you have longer rounds to work with, your technique is going to sharpen up and change, because you're going to realize that you can't just throw recklessly. You have to now economize your punches. You have to really economize your movement. Otherwise, you'll put yourself in a situation of extreme disadvantage. So, it was actually a very intriguing match. I didn't do film study on it, but maybe I will at a later time. But those were the two events this weekend that were very pivotal, and so I just had to cover that in this podcast. So, it's not constructive to be destructive, vision obstructed, life a crime, my boss busted for money, lust, to live my life not like those seeing things in black and white, Rachel, right, fight, look up the limelight, take, and I see it, stone, illustrate my dome, coming from my interior home, superior, still.